put in equilibrium. So whenever we take this free body, we work with this free body first. This value here is going to be zero. That's going to be zero. That has to be zero. So internal forces, as you know, we don't see it in here. Equal and opposite. This has to be zero. This cannot be one. Turn that mic off, please. Yes, I'm going to raise a little bit. So this is what I was talking about, that the unit law is to the left of to the left of this section, to the right, sorry, of this section. Right? So we work with this free body first. And we cannot have any force in here, because if we do have a force, whatever magnitude, we have to have one force in here. And these two forces will produce a moment or a couple. It cannot be put in equilibrium. So both of them have to be zero. And this one has to be also zero, because these are internal forces, zero and zero. So what we do have in here is in this is almost at the same location. This is one and this is one. The measure of forces in Y, this also is zero. So this is a special case. The next case that I'm going to be looking at is the unit load to the left of E. This is the point E. And the unit load is to the left. Again, we don't see any forces. We're going to break it into one free body to the left and one free body to the right. The same that we had before. We cannot have a force in here, because if we had a force of any magnitude at this location, we had to have one in here. And if we do have these forces, we're going to have a moment, a couple, we cannot put it in equilibrium. So they have to be zero, that has to be. And if this is zero, this is. Now, this is exactly the middle, because this is 10 and this is 10. So that's 0.5 and 0.5. I don't know why science students in the past, they put forces in here. We don't have any reaction at this location. We cannot have any force. The only force that we had in here is one to the left of the section. So it's going to be 0.5 and 0.5, because exactly at the center, and this is going to be. Assuming that you put a force of one at this location, that has to be one. And one times 20, it cannot be put in equilibrium. So no force, 0.5 and 0.5. The next page that I'm going to be looking at is page number 4. Look for page number 4. And in page number 4, what I have is the unit load before the unit load leaves the structure, because when the unit load is at F, this is 1 and this is 1. We don't have to do any free body. 1 and 1. So when the unit load is at G, before it leaves the structure, look, only one load before it leaves the structure, we had two free bodies, the A, B, C that we had before, and we had the free body that is C, D, E, F, G. There's no load in here. So when we apply moment about this point, this is going to be zero. With some forces, we have to start with this free body always. We apply moment about this location, this is zero, summation of force in Y, this is zero. Those two have to be zero. So now I can, since I know this force, I apply moment about this point as 1 times 10, and this unknown force times 20. It gave me that this is 0.5 going down to have equilibrium. Moment produced by this force about this point has to be equal and opposite to the moment produced by this unit load about the same point. So it came at 0.5 and summation of forces in Y, 1.5 going. I want to use this free body to compute the shear force at E. what is the shear force produced by this unit load at E? So I took this free body. What you see here below is exactly, I had taken this section, I had cut this free body, and this free body is here below. So I had a 1.5, 1.5. I had a 1, I had a 1. So I had to have a shear force in here to have summation for reason. Why? Since this in here is 1 down, this is 1.5, they have to be 0.5 going down. Most of the time, we had a problem with the sign. But whenever you look at this, remember that in statics, we had this little block. And the one that I showed to you in class for shear. When you look at the right side, going down is positive. Looking to the left side of the free body, going up is also positive. So whenever you're looking at this free body, this is the right side and this is the left side. See the left side going in this direction, on the left side going up. That's why this one is negative. This one is a negative value. I had taken the free body to the right, just to show you. Now, this section that I have in here, I'm computing the shear to the right of D. So this section, you look at what I'm doing in here, this section is down here. We had a 0.5 and we had an equal and opposite 0.5. And when you look at this left side of the free body, I want to increase the size. When you look at this particular free body in here, and this is from this section of the structure, we have 0.5, 0.5, and this in here, summation force and Y, the shear force to the right of D is 0.5. When you look at this is positive on the right side, this is in the opposite direction, this is going to be a negative value. Any question up to this point? Any question? Clarification? No? Okay. So I'm going to go to page 5. And I'm going to compute. This is different. I didn't do this in class. I have 1 at A. And this is what I did before. When 1 was at A, I computed all of these forces. This is what we did before. When 1 was at A, I did it 5 minutes ago. I had computed all these reactions. But now I'm going to answer this question. When 1 is at A, what is the reaction at D? When 1 is at A, what is the shear at A? When 1 is at A, what is the moment at E? When 1 is at A, what is the shear to the right of D? So I'm going to answer all of the questions only for this position. So what I have done, I have worked the free body. For instance, for the reaction at E, the reaction at D, this is D, and this is my free body in here. The reaction at D, look, when the unit load is at this location, it's producing a reaction at D down 0.75. So I have written in here for you, reaction at D is 0.75. The next value of the shear at E. So for the shear at E, I could take this free body or I could take this free body. Doesn't make any difference. So for the shear at E, that is the second question, I'm taking this free body in here. You can see below, I have put a free body. I have 0.25, 0.25, no other load. This is my section. So when I do summation of forces in Y, this shear is 0.25. And I have written in here shear E. I'm putting also the sign negative. Left-hand side, if you look at the little block that I had before, left-hand side going down, negative, I put in negative. But that's the shear at E when the unit load is at this location. The moment at E, you look at the free body below, look, this is exactly the same free body. I cut it at this location, exactly the same free body. And for this free body, I had a 0.25, 0.25, but now I apply moment. 0.25 times 10 is going to be 2.5. Acting moment in this direction. Opposite, 2.5. Is this positive or negative? I'm writing in there that it's positive because if you look at the compression, that moment is putting the compression on the top. That moment, if you look at what I have here, that moment is putting the compression on the top. That's why it's positive and putting 2.5. The last computation is the shear to the right of D. So this free body for the shear to the right of D, I could take for the shear to the right of D, I could take this section, or I could take this section. It's easier to take this section because only one force. If you cut it in here, you can see that is 0.25. But I'm taking this just to show you that you can get the same. So the section shear to the right of D is this in here. You had a 0.5 and 0.5, 0.75 and 0.75. So when I do summation of forces in Y, it tells me that the shear to the right of D is 0.25 going up to have equilibrium, 0.5 and 0.25, 0.75 minus 0.75, 0, equilibrium. But this is negative. Remember the little block goes in the opposite direction, but I'm reading it here to make a point that is negative. So with all these values, I'm gonna jump to page 14 or page 10. Let me see what page. Page 10. I'm gonna show you the different influence line. Look, there's a question in there about on the exam going to calculate magnitudes of reaction. No matter what they're asking you, you always have to compute all the reaction. Because if you had the reaction, you saw how I can compute the shear to the right of D, the shear at E. We can compute anything. So number one, you compute all the reaction, and after that, you answer the question. For instance, in this case, look, the shear at, or let's start with the reaction. The reaction at D, when the unit load is at this location, the reaction at D is 0.75. So this is the influence line. This is the influence line for the reaction at D. Influence reaction at D. Where the unit load is at this location, is producing a negative value of 0.75. When the unit load was at this location, it's producing 0.7. Look at the shear at E. When the unit load is at this location, the shear at E is negative 0.25. This is the influence line. This is the influence line for the shear at E. This is what happens at E when the unit load goes across the structure. We only looking at the unit load at A is producing this value of 0.25. And this is what I just computed in here. Look, the moment at E, 2.5 positive. This is the influence line for the moment at E. This is the influence line for the moment at E. Look, when the unit load is at A, it's producing a positive 2.5. Shear to the right of D, we computed in here the shear to the right of D. It came at 0.25 negative when the unit load is at A. Look, 0.25 negative. So all the values, if you look at all the influence lines that I have in here, you look at all the influence lines that I have in here, all the values that we have found, when the unit load is at A, it produces this reaction at D. When the unit load is at A, it produces this shear at E, and it is in here. When the unit load is at this location, it's producing this moment at E. Look, and when the unit load is at this location, it's producing this shear to the right of D 0.25. So I had done a little bit different. I had computed for every load case, I had computed at each at the same location the values for the reaction at D, the shear at E, the moment at E, and shear to the right of D. Something that is important. Look, why this is zero, this is zero, this is zero, this is zero. This location is when the unit load is at B. So when the unit load is at B, this reaction is 1. Everything else, reaction at D, 0. The shear at E, 0. Moment at E, 0. The shear to right of D, 0. So everything is 0 because this support absorbs all the reaction. I'm going to go back to page, or go to the next page, page 6. I'm going to do exactly the same for when 1 is to the left of C. This is 1 to the left of C. I'm going to compute the reaction at D, the shear at E, the moment at E, and the shear to the right of D. So we did this at the beginning of the lecture. Don't forget, please turn your mic off. Look, at the beginning of the lecture, I computed the reaction. Like the answer to one of the questions is, no matter what I'm asking or they're asking you in here, you have to compute the reaction first. And we have computed the reaction first because these are determinate structures. Once you know the reaction, you know everything. So we did this before. When the unit load is at this location, it's producing all of it. So look at the reaction at D. When the unit load is at this location, the reaction at D 1.5 up, positive. Look at the shear at E. So I'm taking this free body, EFG. Like I mentioned before, I could also take this free body. Makes no difference because internally they're going to be equal and opposite, and both of them they're going to have the same sign. So I'm taking this free body EFG. You can see 0.5, 0.5. I take in my section. Summation of forces in Y is obvious, 0.5. According to the sign convention, this going up on the left-hand side is positive, but I'm putting also in there that is a positive 0.5. The next free body. The moment at E, when the unit load is at this location, what is the moment at E? So I'm taking the same free body, this free body, and reusing my free body. I'm reusing the free body. You can see the 0.5, 0.5. And now it's obvious that 0.5 times 10 is going to produce a moment in this direction. We have to have an equal and opposite. So 10.5 is 5, equal and opposite. And I'm putting, turn the mic off, please. I'm putting a value of negative because if you bend this free body, the compression is going to be at the bottom. That's why we say negative. For the shear to the right of D, it's easier apparently to take this free body or to take this free body. If I take this free body, it's obvious that is 0.5. If I take this free body, it's also obvious that is 0.5. I'm gonna take this free body to compute the shear just to the right of D. And this is what I have in here. So I'm taking this free body in here. This free body just to the right of D. You see 1.5. I had it down below here. I had a 1, I had a 1.5, summation of forces in Y. 1 down, 1.5, they have to be. And again, based on the sign convention, this is a positive 0.5. I'm writing in there for you that is this positive. So what I'm gonna do, now that we know this, when 1 is to the left of C, I'm gonna write all of these values. This is the same influence line that I had before. Look. When the unit load is to the left of C, this is the case. Unit load to the left of C, what is the reaction at D? 1.5 going up. That's what I put in here, 1.5. When the unit load is at this location, what is the shear at E? The shear at E is 0.5 positive. I put in here 0.5. Look at the moment. The moment at E, negative 0.5. When the unit load is at C, so you have, sorry, the shear. The shear at E is 0.5. The moment at E is 5. You can see 5 negative and put it in here, the 5 negative. And the shear to the right, the shear to the right of D came as 0.5. Look at the shear to the right, shear to the right of D, 0.5 positive, 0.5. Any question? Any question? Okay. Now I want you to move to page 7. In this particular situation, because they wanted to compute the shear to the right of D, I'm showing this case that otherwise I would never show that this is 1 and this. Right? So when you look at this and you want to know the shear, look, 1 and 1, the shear to the right of D, it's obvious that it's 0. So if this load is going from left to right and stopping here produce this reaction 1. So the shear, the first value of the shear to the right is 0. But this is a live load, and this is the most difficult case, so pay attention. And if I had to repeat it, I will. Look, the first over the support 1, the shear is 0. But now we look at this load, it has moved from here to this point. So it's no longer over the support. But since it's so close to the support, this is 0.99991 because very close to the support. But when I take this free body, when I take this section and I look at this free body, look, this load is no longer in my free body because it already moved. But when I look at this free body, I have it below here. Look, zero, this is one. And when I do summation of forces in Y, this becomes one. And it's positive because it goes down. So whenever they want you to find the shear to the right or to the left of support, it's going to go from 0 to 1. And here is the case. From 0, it's going to go 0 first, and after that, 1. So this is page 10. Look, this is the support D. Look, this is the location. This location D is going to go from 0 to 1. And look, this is the influence line. The influence line for the shear to the right of D. Look, it goes from 0 to 1 in the same location. The first value that we compute was 0. The next value is 1. So this is, a lot of people get confused with this. The shear to the right of D, the first one over the support 0, just a little bit to the right 1. Any question? I'm going to do now one to the left of E. One to the left of E, we did it at the beginning of the lecture. This is the case. You compute your reaction, we computed the reaction. So I'm going to use this to compute everything. For instance, when the unit load is at this location, the reaction at D 0.5 going up. The shear at E, for the shear at E, all that you have to do, doesn't matter how ugly or pretty the problem is to determine the structure. You need to compute the shear by using this free body, or you're going to use this free body. Makes no difference. I had decided to use this free body because there's only one force. Even before you take your free body, you know the magnitude of the shear in here. Now I'm taking the free body, 0.5, 0.5, summation of forces in Y, 0.5 up, 0.5 down, negative. To compute the moment also at E and using the same free body. And using the same free body to compute the moment at E. 0.5 times 10 is 5, but 5 now to be in equilibrium. This goes in this direction, that has to be in the opposite. And it's positive because look where the compression, if you bend it, the compression is going to be on the top. That's why. And the last computation, shear to the right of D. So this is the free body. I'm taking this section, 0 and 0.5. I have 0 and 0.5. Summation of forces in Y give me a value of 0.5. 0.5 going down. So I'm going to go to the influence line. Look, when the unit load is to the left or E, the reaction at D is 0.5 positive. Look, this value 0.5 positive. The shear at E 0.5 negative. Look, 0.5 negative. And at any location, I'm gonna increase the size of it. At any location, when we compute the shear, the first value is always going to be negative. In this case, it happened to be 0.5. At this location, it's going to be 0.1 always. If this is 0.5, the other one is going to be 0.5. If this is 0.2, this is going to be 0.8. If this is 0.9, this is going to be 0.1. That has to be equal to 1. Always at the location where you computing the shear, it's going to go down, immediately goes up and goes to the right. But this is the 0.5 and 0.5. Look. When the unit load is to the left of this section, the moment at E is 5 and positive. So look at the influence line for the moment. The moment at E, 0.5 positive. And also remember that we can use proportion. If this is 5 and this is 10, and this is 10, that has to be 5. So I'm going to go ahead and look at the last case. The last case is going to be when the unit load is at G. I'm going to find all of these values when the unit load is at G. Because when the unit load is at F, you can see that this is 0 because the reaction is 1. At F, everything else is 0. At this location, the shear is 0, 0, 0. So always whenever we had this support, if we are not computing the reaction at F, everything else is going to be equal. So the next page that I have is one at G. And this is page 9. The unit load is at G. We already computed. We always compute the reaction. The unit load G is producing this reaction, and everything is 0. So whenever we look at this free body, the reaction at D, 0.5 going down. If I take this free body or that free body, to compute the shear at this location, I have taken this free body. You can see the 1, the 1.5, and my section. I did summation of forces in Y. It's so simple because 1.5 going up, 1 goes down, that has to go down equal to 0.5. And because of the direction of this force is negative, I wrote in there. We need to compute the moment also at E and recycling this free body to compute the moment at E. So it's obvious. If you were to use this free body, it's always going to be 0.5 times 10. If I use this free body, I had done the computation here, also came 5. But this direction is negative. And finally, I want to compute the shear to the right of D. So you can see my free body shear to the right of D. I'm taking this free body and put it in here. You can see 0, 0.5, 0.5, and this, I'm taking this free body. So as I mentioned, force is in Y, 0.5 down, 0.5 up. And because it goes up, it's a negative value. So what I done, look at the influence line. Look at the influence line, the reaction at D is 0.5. And if you look at the reaction at D 0.5 negative, look at D in here 0.5 negative. The next value of the shear at 8.5 negative, look at the shear at 8.5 negative. The next value is the shear to the right of E, 0.5 negative, the shear to the right of D, 0.5 negative. So this is the way we do draw the influence line. All of these drawings, they show you only one location. For instance, this one on the top, the one here on the top is for the reaction at D. So it shows you how much the reaction at E changes when the load move across the structure. And for instance, when the load is in here, produces this. When the load is in here, produces this. When the load is in here, it produces this value. When the load is in here, it's an obvious one because it's a reaction at D. So all of this, and only for one location, the reaction. The same happen with the next one. The shear at one location at only E, and when the unit load goes across the structure, it produces these different values at each one of these locations. This happens with the moment at E. All of these values are produced when the unit load goes across the structure, and this is for the shear to the right of D. Important to know, this is point D. At that location, going to be 0 and 1. Important to know, for the shear at E, this value plus that value has to be equal to 1. The shear always starts with a negative, goes up, and becomes positive. What I have down here is one of the questions. They want you to compute the maximum positive, because it could be maximum negative, moment at E. And they give you the unit for the dead load, 25 kg per foot, and the live load. The dead load is always there. The dead load, we cannot get rid of the dead load. The live load move. So if they want to find the maximum positive moment at E, we're gonna go and look at the influence line for the moment at E. And this one is the influence line for the moment at E. You can see it has positive, negative, positive, net. So the way we're gonna compute the maximum moment at E, dead load has to be all over. The dead load is gonna be all over the structure. The dead load has to be all over the structure. But since they had the one positive value at the moment, we're gonna load this portion positive. We're gonna load this portion positive. And we are not going to load the negative or the negative. So below in this page, I have look, dead load all over, and load in my structure, dead load all over. Positive in here, only load on this side. Positive between these 2 points, I had a load in this side. So this is the way we're gonna load this particular structure to produce the maximum positive moment at E. Like I said, dead load rollover and the live load. I forgot to put it here, 75. Only whenever we had the positive. And in order to compute the maximum moment at E, we can use statics, compute the reactions, and compute the moment the same way that I did. But normally we use the influence line. And what we do, we multiply this area times this load. This in that area. This area in here times this load. This positive area here times this load, and this negative area times the load. So we multiply here. Okay, let me finish with this and I tell you. So all of this load multiplied times the positive area. And we know the area because triangular area, the base times the height divided by 2. All of this load times this negative area. all of this load times this positive area, and this load times the negative. And this is exactly what I've done in here. You can see the load in here and the area. We had the load times the area. Here the area and the load, area and the load. And so that gives us the maximum positive 3750. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to go again and explain how I created the area, and after I'm going to answer the question about this. Look, what you have in front of you is the influence line. This is the influence line for the moment at E. All of this. This is the influence line for the moment at E. I think it's easier this way. Please turn the mic off. Okay. So then when the maximum positive, I'm gonna load this area with a positive and dead load. I'm gonna load this only with dead load. I'm gonna load this with dead and live load, and this only with dead load. So why is 100? Because look, all of this dead load 25 pounds. 25, 25, 25. 25 plus 75, 100. In here, only 25. 25 plus 75, 100. And in here, only 25. This 100 in here is 75 plus 25. This is only the dead load, negative. In here, dead plus live, 25 plus 75. Positive area, negative, only 25. Any other question? And now I'm going to go to the top. I'm going to do this. If I want to compute the maximum positive reaction at D, I will look at this influence line. This value, negative, plus, and negative. I went to the other one. Negative, plus, and negative. and negative plus plus negative. Okay. So the influence line tell you exactly where to place the load. The dead load is all over. So whenever I look at this influence line and they want me to produce the maximum positive reaction at D, I put my dead load all over. My dead load will go in this beam here on the top. My dead load will go all over. That's the 25. But for the maximum positive, the live load only go from this point to that point. And I'm gonna do it right now for you. This is the dead load, 25. Yeah. I'm gonna show you the influence line again. In this situation, if I want the maximum positive reaction at D, I'm gonna load only the positive. So I'm gonna come here. So this is the loading case that will give me the maximum positive reaction at D. Dead load all over, and only the positive dead load all over, and only on the positive portion of the diagram, I put the live load. Look at the diagram again. Look at this diagram. Dead load goes all over, positive only between B, point B, and point F. And this is exactly what I have in here. Massive positive reaction at D. I'm going to look at the shear at E. Look at the shear. Look at the shear at E. If I want to produce the maximum negative shear at E, I would put my dead load all over. In this structure, dead load all over, and only load the negative portion. Only load this portion with a live load, and this portion with a live load, and this portion with a live load. So the influence line tell you exactly where to place the load. Um, okay, I'm gonna draw the loading for this. So they want the maximum the value of the share. No matter what I do, the dead load has to be all over. But now since they want negative, I look at this diagram. So the negative is in here. I'm gonna put live load in here. The negative is between D and E. Between D and E, I'm gonna count between D and E. Put 75 kilo. So there was negative value between D and E. Sorry. D and E, and now between F and G. So I'm gonna come here between F and G. So this is the loading combination that will give you the maximum negative value of the shear at E. So no matter what they ask you, this is a picture how this tell you exactly where to place the load. You look at the dead load has to be all over. But the live load, we play with the live. Whenever there's positive, if they want positive, we put the live. If they want negative, we put on the negative. So exactly where the load goes is exactly how the influence line. Somebody had a question? What kind of question? Positive shear at D. Okay. There's a question, the positive shear at D. And I want you to look, I want you to look at the problem again. It's a positive shear at E. And if you look at this value in here, positive shear at E, right? So I'm going to look at the influence line for E. And this is my influence line for E. All, all of this, all of this is going to have dead load. Only between B and D, live load, and between E and F, live load. So I'm going to put this case below. Now I'm going to put the live load. So in here, we had the two cases. This is the maximum negative, and this is the maximum. And I didn't have to look at the influence line because whatever I didn't load with a live load before, I loaded this time. Whatever I didn't load with a live load before, I loaded this time. Whatever I load with a live load before, I unloaded. I unloaded and unloaded. This also in the test book is known as the checkerboard. So you just whatever you feel one time, you remove it and feel the other. You can see in here the influence line for the shear. At it tell you always put the dead load. For positive, you only load this portion and you load this portion. For negative, you load this portion, and this portion. So I did the negative before, and after that, I did the positive. So whatever I had loaded before I unloaded, you can see in here, unloaded, whatever I didn't load, I loaded with a light. Any question? Any other question before I go to trusses? Okay. The influence line for trusses is a very, very simple. And like for a beam, it had to be for only one member. It could be for a member on the tension, bottom core, compression, or diagonal. This is the case that I want to show you today. This is a typical bridge structure. Sometimes the traffic uses the top portion we call the top core. Sometimes it uses the bottom portion or the bottom. In this particular problem, of course, it has to be a determinate truss. We're going to use the top core, this top portion for the traffic. So we're going to have a unit load at one time, it's going to be at B, and we're going to compute the reaction. The same that we did for the beams. The unit load is going to be at this location, we're going to compute the reaction. When the unit load is at this location, all the load goes to here, like before. After that, when the load is at this location, we're going to compute the reaction. The unit load goes at this joint, we're going to compute the reaction. And to this joint, we're going to compute the reaction and the same. So at each joint, if they are using the bottom portion, we will put the load at the bottom portion. But then here it said the load uses the top core. And then want to draw the influence line for the member DL is this one. For member EF, that is the top one. For the member GJ, that is this one. And CL. We have to do one at a time. And for instance, I'm going to do this one, I'm going to do this one, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. But why do we do the influence line for the truss? Because the influence line is going to tell you exactly where to place the load to produce maximum positive, maximum negative. In certain cases, all the time the member is going to be working under tension. But in other cases, it could be working under tension and compression. So we call it reversal of stresses. Some of you that they're in steel or probably already taking concrete without a prerequisite, you know that tension design is different than the compression design. And one of the problems with deal, especially with compression, is buckling. nothing to do with the ability to carry the load, is that it's gonna bend. It's gonna back out of place. It could be general buckling or lateral buckling or local buckling. So what we had to do is compute the reaction. This is page 12. Now I'm gonna look at page 13. Look, a truss is like, to compute the reaction, the truss is like a beam. So I have placed this line in here with this support and that support. So this is what we had in here. The truss, just to compute the reaction, is just a line with this support and that support. So when the unit load is at this particular location, when the unit load is at this location, it's producing this reaction. Exactly the same that we did before. We are computing reaction. I'm not even looking at, they ask for anything that they want. If I had a reaction, I could compute any value that they want me to compute. So after that, the unit load moved here at C. This is why I represented here 1 and 1. Look, the support absorbs everything. So there's no reaction, there's nothing. After that, it moved, this unit load moving to D. And this is the case, 1 at D is producing these two reactions. 1 at E is below. 1 at E is producing this reaction. And you can see that because of the location, the reaction, we switch the places of the reaction. And finally, or not finally, but when the unit load is at this location, this is 1. And this is what I have in here. This location unit load at G, and G is here on the top. And so when the unit load is at G, look how now this force, instead of going up, it goes down. 0.33 and 1.33. This is a very common mistake. Finally, the unit load is at H. We compute this reaction the same, down and up. So when we have computed all of this reaction, we look at the truss. They're asking me to find what happened with this member. So I taking this free body. See this free body in here? I'm taking it at this location. And I have put, assuming the force on the top is compression, assuming this force in the member is tension, assuming this force is tension, I'm going to use this free body for the entire problem to compute the member at the forces in member CL. And just before, I'm going to continue on Wednesday, but before finishing, look, this free body, the best equation to use is summation of forces in Y, because this unknown force doesn't have a component in Y. This unknown force doesn't have a component in Y. So I'm going to do summation of forces in Y. And this is a 45 degree, 1 square root of 2. So when I do summation of forces in Y, I have -1. I had a reaction. I have FCL 1 square root of 2. It tells me that FCL is positive tension, as assumed. So the only thing that is going to change in here is that this unit load is going to move, the reaction is going to change. When the unit load goes to this location, no longer appear my free body. The only thing that changes is the reaction. So I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop in here, and I'm going to see if you have any question. Let me see what. Okay. You can use your microphone and camera, webcam, anything that you want right now. Any questions or comments or anything? I think that somebody was recording. They need to send me the recording I'm going to upload. And how to contact me, I already sent you an email. I sent email to everybody saying that my virtual office hours are Mondays and Wednesdays from 1 to 3. However, I also put in there that you can do it by appointment because you might be in class, you might be doing what you're not supposed to be doing, probably going to the mall or whatever. So if you need to talk to me um, every Monday, Wednesday from 1 to 3, send me an email and I help you. We had the tutor and the grader, they already had a virtual classroom. So all that we can do is help you, but you need to ask for it. Um, any other question? Yeah, the same link. This is my virtual office. I'm gonna be here all the time for you. But if the office is closed because doing something else, just send me email and I go back to the office and help you in the email. But remember, I'm in class, I'm in a still class uh, Mondays and Wednesdays at 10 o'clock and Tuesday from 8:30 to about 11. And in senior design from 11, Tuesday and Thursday, probably only Tuesday from 11 to 12:45. Any any other question? You can turn your microphone on if you want.